Hello. Okay, this is the second in the series on um, my thoughts on hypnosis and the use of hypnosis. In the first introduction, I spoke a little bit about what hypnosis is, or at least one way to think about hypnosis. Um, Today, I'm going to speak about something that we can maybe call the stepping stone approach, which essentially is developing one's own capacity for the use of trance, or one's own ability to enter into trance, whether through some process guided by somebody else or through self-hypnosis. Now, just as a preamble to this, I think it's important to note that there are some people who are highly hypnotizable, who do not really need any preparation or any development of their skill, their ability. It is difficult to know if you are such a person without the relevant experience. There are some things that one can pay attention to that may give clues. Things like, for instance, one's ability to be absorbed in a movie or a story, or perhaps something like the ability to quite easily daydream for extended periods of time. Maybe things like being lost in thought while driving in a motor vehicle, and so on. So these examples are obviously not exhaustive. There are also measures that are used, questionnaires or tests that are used to give an indication of suggestibility scales. I think the easiest way for anyone actually to just figure out whether or not they are hypnotizable is to have the experience of hypnosis and get feedback from your own experience, and of course the person that may have induced trance. If you are doing this on your own, of course, your own subjective experience is the most immediate type of feedback that you can have. So this recording is not really aimed at those people who are really super suggestible and who will kind of, at the first sign of induction, kind of drop like a stone. There are people like that. Wonderful to work with people like that. Very easy. But if you are not that kind of person, I don't think it's appropriate to assume that you are not hypnotizable. Again, like most things, being good at anything takes practice. And I think going into trance and utilizing trance is a skill like most skills. Now, as I said in the first recording on hypnosis, there is a subset of people, anywhere between, let's say, 25-35% of people who are probably not hypnotizable, at least not by or via the methods that we usually use for induction. But that does mean that most people have a certain degree of hypnotizability. So, okay, stepping stone. So the stepping stone idea is to find a way of induction with a specific aim in mind, and the aim that I would suggest is actually to look at particular or specific behavior change. Now, behavior in this regard can be an internal or an external behavior. I would not suggest something that is quite tricky, like, for instance, some addiction. People would maybe start with something like cigarette addiction, and they would want to use hypnosis for that. Now, hypnosis can be used for that, but I would suggest aiming around an addictive behavior. For instance, let's say you wanted to enhance your own healthy lifestyle, and one of the elements of that would be to go to gym or to do some form of exercise. I would suggest that initially, if you are building up your ability to induce and to use trance, that you start with something focal like that, and then to make sure that your hypnosis is aimed at that very specific type of behavior. So in this example, maybe you want to stop smoking, but you are using your hypnosis to encourage yourself to go walk around the block, or walk 10,000 steps, or maybe go to gym. It doesn't mean that necessarily that you're going to do the very best series of exercises, but to get yourself to gym, for instance. Of course, assuming that these are things that you may struggle doing just purely using willpower. So the idea with the stepping stone approach is that you use it for a very specific kind of behavior. Oh, I should also say the behavior can be something external, like going for a walk, or something internal, like developing a specific set of thoughts or reacting to certain thoughts. Developing certain thoughts, for instance, to remind yourself of certain specific capabilities. Let's say, off the top of my head, let's stay with the same example. You're trying to stop smoking, but you have this recurrent thought pattern that, oh dear, I just can't, I'm addicted, there's nothing I can do. So you may use hypnosis, for instance, to suggest to yourself that you have changed many times in your life, you have learned a lot of things, and you are certainly capable of change when you put your mind to it, when you put effort into it, and when you believe that you can. So something simple like that. So to, for instance, counter a negative thought pattern and or develop a certain positive thought pattern around something very specific. Okay, so to focus on a very specific behavior for a time, to practice going into trance, and we'll speak in a later recording on what that may look like. Now, the purpose of the stepping stone is not merely or not only to practice, but to also get very specific kind of feedback. In other words, you want to not only have the experience of entering into trance, but you also want to have the experience of hypnosis working for you. Now, some things are maybe a little bit more easy to achieve. Most hypnosis, not all of it, it's not a requirement, but most hypnosis is usually accompanied by a sense of relaxation. And if that is in fact your aim with the hypnosis, then it's pretty easy to achieve that. Again, not all hypnosis requires a very deep sense of relaxation for it to be effective, but more often than not, people experience hypnosis as something that is quite relaxing. So if your aim is to experience relaxation, that's pretty easy, but it's not that useful unless you are somebody who really finds it difficult to relax. It's not that useful to use that as a measure of how effective hypnosis is for you, because you have not necessarily done anything out of the ordinary. One would assume that on a daily basis there are times during the day and in the evening when you go to sleep that you are able to relax. So it may not be something out of the ordinary. So to achieve something that is even slightly out of the ordinary has a very powerful element of conviction to it. And if you can then start to believe in the efficacy of your own hypnosis or the experience of hypnosis and the ability for hypnosis to lead to change, then obviously you will have more motivational capacity for the next stepping stone, whatever that may be. So in terms of the stepping stone idea, to start with something very specific, very simple, very straightforward, to have a particular measure for success. So, let's say again in the example of going for a walk, so that you say, okay, my measure of success will be to go for a walk around the block at least 3 times a week, something specific like that. Assuming that this is something that you can do, of course, but, physically, but that you are not doing for whatever reason. Of course, the idea is not necessarily that you would initially go for 3 walks around the block or walk around the block 3 times a week immediately, but that there is, okay, so the first week I've been using my hypnosis, I did go for 1 walk, then maybe second week 2 walks, and then third week 3 walks. Okay, so 3 times that you've completed, or 3 weeks that you have developed the capacity and then finally achieved the goal. So once that goal is achieved, then of course that can be your measure that, all right, it seems that the hypnosis is working. I've set the goal. The goal I set was something that I had not been able to achieve initially, but that I can do now. The second stepping stone might be something that is a little bit more difficult, or it might be something in a similar kind of range, to just see that you are capable of repeating this. So very often, getting through the first hurdle of, okay, is this going to work or not, is significant. Then of course it becomes a thing of, okay, but can I do this again? And then a second intervention or a second goal might be useful. And again, it may be something of similar in terms of difficulty or effort or achievability. Okay, so the idea is then that there is gradual progression towards more and more difficult things. Now, okay, this may not be something that you desire, but I know that some people are very interested in using hypnosis for more significant and deeper changes, some things that are not just specifically behavioral. These might be more general psychological changes, and or, as I indicated in the first recording, things that are maybe a little bit more esoteric. Now, having said all that I've said about the stepping stone approach, which is generally the approach I would suggest for people to get the hang of hypnosis, and to develop their capacity and their skill, you may want to try hypnosis that has a much grander aim in mind. You get many guided hypnosis recordings. Something that springs to mind that is more sort of in line with the notion of esotericism is what is referred to as past life regression. And again, my suggestion is that if you use one of those sources, your own subjective experience is the most meaningful thing to rely on. All right, I think I'm going to conclude there with this set of ideas, or these ideas today. So consider using a stepping stone kind of approach, one where there's a gradual development of your skill and ability, but of course if you are keen and you have resources, you can play around with hypnosis. I should maybe just add a caveat. I will not offer any hypnosis induction myself for ethical reasons. Part of those reasons are that there might be a small subset of people who may experience some of the induction techniques as threatening, or they may experience something more like panic or anxiety in response to hypnosis suggestions. If I'm with a patient doing hypnosis, I can see, I can observe, they can give me feedback, so one can adapt. Of course, if you're using some kind of recording or a resource like that, there's no feedback like that, and it would not be ethical for me to offer any kind of hypnotic induction as a professional without that particular feedback, because there may be, again, some people who may have a negative experience. Now, again, the number of people or the percentage of people who will have that kind of experience is very small. But if you do play around with these kinds of resources, again, trust your own experience. If there is a strong sense of anxiety, something approaching panic, that may not be the thing for you. Again, it does not mean that you are not necessarily supposed to use hypnosis, but maybe using that particular sort or source of hypnosis might not be the best thing for you. Yeah. So by all means, feel free to play around, but trust your own experience, and be safe. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.